May the words of my mouth and the thoughts of all our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our strength and our salvation. Amen. It is for all literalists of the imagination, poets or not, that miracle is possible and essential. So says the poet Denis Levertov in the poem on belief in the physical resurrection of Jesus. And she seems rather at odds with our usual understanding of miracles. Miracles surely are impossible, moments when the rules of the world are suspended. You can't have your 5 loaves and 2 fishes and eat them. You can't dip a cup in a water butt and pull out wine. The dead do not rise. But when Levertov says that miracles are possible and essential, she doesn't mean possible according to the rules of the world. She means that miracles show us something that we cannot otherwise imagine, the love and the life of God. Miracles in general, and as her poem continues, the resurrection of Jesus in particular, are possible from the standpoint of God and essential from the standpoint of human beings, we who cannot understand what God is like unless God shows us. The poem concludes, "We must feel the pulse in the wound to believe that with God all things are possible. Taste bread at Emmaus that warm hands broke and blessed." Levertov is thinking here of Thomas in the gospel reading that we've just heard, and of his emphatic statement that unless I see the mark of the nails in his hands and put my finger in the mark of the nails and my hand in his side, I will not believe. And she's also thinking about those of us who hear Jesus's half-teasing, half-chiding, "Have you believed because you have seen me? Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have come to believe." And wonder where it leaves us, who, like Thomas, desire the reassurance of physical proof, but unlike Thomas, are not offered it. In the centre of the poem, she raises a note of caution about those people who have not seen and yet have come to believe. She suggests that there is a danger for them and for us. Resurrection for them an internal power, but not a matter of flesh. If we have not seen, in other words, we need to be sure that we remember that there was something to see. If we believe, we need to be sure about what it is we believe. In the pulse in the wound, in the warmth of the hands, in the matter of flesh. Those who believe without seeing, we who believe without seeing, are indeed blessed, so long as we do really believe. But Thomas is also blessed. Jesus doesn't say so, I think, because it's so obvious. The blessing has been enacted, it doesn't need to be said. Thomas is blessed because he has been brave enough to articulate what he needs from Jesus, and because Jesus has offered him exactly that. Thomas is blessed because he's been brave enough to change his mind, to accept the new reality which miracle has shown him, and to recognize the truth of that reality in confessing Jesus to be his Lord and his God. Thomas did not see any middle ground. Either Jesus was physically risen, an impossibility, a miracle, or nothing at all had happened. So when he receives the proof that he needs, Jesus there, offering his pierced hands and his slashed side, he does not prevaricate. He believes in the impossibility of miracle. He cries out, "My Lord and my God." And he is changed, just like the other disciples who have also seen Jesus, alive and risen, impossibly and miraculously there with them. We meet them a little while later in Acts. Peter and the apostles acting, as we heard in this morning's reading, with courage and resolution. Not because they have always been courageous and resolute people. Peter, not long before, had stood in the high priest's courtyard and denied 3 times that he knew Jesus. But because they have seen Jesus, the risen Lord, and they are forever changed by the reality of God, impossibly and miraculously with them. Now, about a third of the way through, Luke, the author of the Acts of the Apostles, seems to lose interest in Peter and James and Thomas and the rest. He switches his focus to the exciting stories about Paul. And that means that we have to look at Christian tradition to find out what happens to Thomas. But there is very old tradition that he went to tell the good news in modern-day Iran and then in India, where he was killed. And the church in India still traces its ancestry back to Thomas. There is quite a distance between saying that he will not believe until he sees and touches the physically risen Jesus, and going to tell the good news in places thousands of miles from anywhere he has ever been before. That is the difference that seeing and touching the risen Jesus makes. The resurrection of Jesus, miraculous and impossible, but physical and real, has real physical consequences in the real world for real people. And if it has these consequences for Thomas, sending him out in courage and resolution, what consequences might it have for us? However difficult it has been to believe without seeing, to take the glory of the miracle on trust, we are those who have not seen and yet have believed. Believed like Thomas, like Peter, like Levertov, in a resurrection that is a real matter of real flesh. Not ignoring our doubts, but admitting them honestly as Thomas did, and being prepared as Thomas was to accept the blessing that heals them. And although we have not seen the risen Jesus standing among us, although we have not felt the pulse in the wound, we do experience the real presence of the risen Jesus in bread and wine, in the water of baptism, in the love of the Christian community, and in our calling to live as followers of Jesus. And that makes us blessed, more blessed even than Thomas. But if we are more blessed than Thomas, then our calling is to be more, not less, courageous than he was, to live out the real, physical, real-world consequences of the resurrection, to realize that because Jesus died for us and was raised to live for us, Jesus also calls us to live for him. Are we being called to travel thousands of miles just to tell the story of Jesus? It's unlikely. The world is a different place from the world of the apostles, and the primary Christian calling is no longer to go across the known and unknown world to make disciples. But the Christian calling remains to make disciples of all nations. And so we might be being called to tell the story of Jesus where we are, to friends and neighbours, to parents and children, to colleagues and classmates. Not forcefully or offensively or in a way that ignores who they are and where they come from, but gently saying, this is who I am. This is what the resurrection of Jesus has done for me. This is the joy that fills me. And crucially, by listening to their response. We who have been changed by the risen Jesus are called to offer the story that has changed us and to trust that God is with us when we do. For the miracle that is possible only for God is essential for everyone. The resurrection of Jesus gives life to all the world and invites all the world with us into that newness of life, that reality of God with whom all things are possible, and that warmth of love that blesses and breaks bread for all our nourishment. Alleluia. Amen.